the way he presents it is, start with, he says, first of all, what ummah are we? We are Jews. We're the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's which is actually important, because you might say, well, that's obvious, but 160 years later, you get assimilation and de-Judaization of the Karaite community in the Russian Empire. So Nehemia, you mentioned ethnic nationalism. That really that you really get a rise in that in the 19th century. And you get all sorts of groups saying that we are the noble descendants of the some
whoever.
Nonsense, like of whoever. It's very often based on complete nonsense. So Karaites in the Russian Empire say, well, we'll play the game too. We speak some Turkic language, which shouldn't be surprising, because Jews, as they've traveled around the world and made communities all around the world, they've preserved Hebrew as a language of literature and prayer and study, but they've picked up the languages of wherever they went. The fact that these Jews spoke a Turkic language means nothing, but part of ethnic nationalism was what language you spoke. So they decided, we're the descendants of the ancient Turkic tribe known as Karaim. There was no ancient Turkic tribe.
I have a great story about that, Gabriel. And I won't give any specific details because I can't, but there was this woman who is a native speaker of this Turkic language, Karaim, who is...
She must be very old, no?
No. I mean, I don't think she's particularly old. No, there's still native speakers. There aren't a lot, but there still are.
Very few, yeah.
So she was invited to teach classes as part of a series on Jewish languages.
Okay.
And they thought, we want someone who's a native speaker of that language.
Great.
And she said, I'm nobody's more qualified in the world than you, they said to her. And she literally wrote a grammar on this language. And she said, I would love to do it, but we have nothing to do with the Jews. And I'd be happy to teach the class, but not as part of a series on Jewish languages. That would be like if somebody was invited to teach a class on Yiddish, was a native Yiddish speaker, and said, I'd love to, but Yiddish has nothing to do with the Jews.
They'd have to change the name of the language, because Yiddish
means Jewish.
Literally means Jewish. But they could.
But
Yiddish has been known by other names. Right. Yiddish has historically been known by, one of the names of Yiddish is Teich, which is simply a form of the word Deutsch. So you could have some total, it's...
Yeah. Well, and Karaim means scripturalist, right? In contrast to Talmudist.
But scripture, you could say, the scripture, it's the same word as Quran. We were Muslims. You could.
Yeah, well, they don't say that, but okay.
No, but there's no end to the nonsense you can say.
Right. So in any event, so what you're talking about is there was this process of de-Judaization where the Karaites of Eastern Europe...
Yes, but you see that at the time of Mordechai ben Nisan, that had not happened at all.
So
you look at them and he says, what ethnicity are you? Not ethnicity.
Yeah.
That's not ethnos.
What ummah are you?
What ummah? And he's, because he doesn't know. And the answer is, it's a no-brainer.
Jewish. Right. Whereas the descendants of Mordechai ben Nisan today, not all of them maybe, but most of them are going to say, no, we have nothing to do with the Jews.
Well, now they do, because they want to get to Israel. Because now, after the Soviet Union failed, and
but this was last year. This wasn't like...
I'm not saying all of them.
Yeah.
But this is actually a problem today, because there are descendants. I know very little about this. I know a little about this. Descendants of Karaite Jews, or descendants certainly of Karaite Jews who themselves, let's see, first, because of ethnic nationalism, they're saying they're not Jewish. There's some other people. At first, they're still practicing Judaism. Mm-hmm. And they said that at some point our ancestors converted to Judaism. This was something they were saying in the 19th century. Then they're not even practicing Judaism, and they have this weird religion that Saraya Shapshal. How do you pronounce his name?
Do you know why they said that in the 19th century, though? That's a great part of the story.
Ethnic nationalism.
No, it was to get out of taxes.
You didn't have to pay the Jewish tax.
Right.
Even if you practiced Judaism, you're saying.
No. So what happened is they were conquered by the Russian Empire, and all of a sudden they were subjected to these oppressive taxes. And they said, why are we being subjected to these taxes? And they said, because you killed Jesus. And they said, "All right, we're smart Jews. Let's figure our way out of this."
We converted to Judaism.
We had nothing to do with Jesus. We weren't even Jews at the time. We were Turks. We were Turks at the time.
By the way, there's a parallel to that.
Yeah.
The community of Mainz, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Had a tradition.
Yeah.
That they had already been in the Middle Ages. They had a tradition that they'd already been living in Mainz.
Yeah.
Before the time of Jesus.
Okay.
And therefore, Jesus was in Jerusalem. We were in Mainz. We had nothing to do with that.
Did the Germans buy that? That's the question. Probably not.
I have no idea.
So the crazy thing is the Russian Empire actually accepted this and exempted them from the taxes.
Okay.
And then eventually they started to believe their own story because.
So you think that it started purely pragmatic
100%
and ethnic nationalism
documented.
Was only after that?
100%. People have written about this. It's been proven.
Okay, because then you get ethnic nationalism, and then they get really into this idea of the proud descendants of the glorious Karaim Turkic
tribe,
race,
right?
or whatever word.
So they actually had two theories. One was that they're descended from the 10 lost tribes, and therefore they weren't there when Jesus was killed.
So that's like the Jews in Mainz. There's
and then the
first
other,
is we're actually very Jewish. We're so Jewish. We were Jewish before Jesus and left.
Right.
And the other is we're not Jewish at all. We got here. We only got involved with Judaism after Jesus already died.
And so the Russians didn't believe the first story. They believed the story about them being a non-Jewish tribe that had converted. And one of the people who was pushing this was Furkovich. And one of the major
pushed that?
Absolutely. And one of the major reasons for his forgeries was to push this.
Because he wanted to show that they were in. Didn't he want to show?
He wanted to show they were in Crimea, but before Jesus was killed.
Long in thousands of years ago, right?
Well, no, or they converted in Crimea. Basically, it was to show we had nothing to do with killing Jesus. That was the purpose.